Welcome to Courtney on Health, heard exclusively on, not exclusively, but almost exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com. Welcome,
Well,
Courtney. Welcome, Max. Maxine,
Hello.
take it away. I
hello.
know we have a poem.
Hello. No poem.
Hello.
No
Well,
poem.
this is Courtney on Health, baby. We got to go right to the meat of the stuff.
Okay.
Can't dilly-dally here. So, hi, Courtney, and I'm Malcolm. Welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast, Everything Cast series, which focuses on one's overall well-being with tips on nutrition and exercise given by Courtney Gravenese, registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree in nutrition and applied physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional health consultant in the New York metro area and beyond, and will help guide you on a path to wellness and health.
And righteousness.
And whatever floats the boat and gets you healthy is what we're trying to do, keeping you in good shape. So, companies spend billions of dollars promoting unhealthy foods virtually everywhere kids go, from TV commercials to billboards and, of course, social media. The fast food chains, sugary cereal companies, the chip makers, as in potato chips, are on the go to list the foods to munch on. You know, they're the go-to list. With that, it's no surprise that American kids and adolescents are eating even more fast food. A new report in 2020 from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention found that children and adolescents got 13.8% of their daily calories from fast food 2015 to 2018, which was up 12.4% in 2011 to
Wow.
2012. The report also found that the proportion of calories from fast food increased with age, with children ages 2 to 11 getting 11.5% of their daily calories from fast food, compared with ages 12 to 19, which was 18%. 12 to 19 is 18%. So how do parents teach their children to eat healthier? It is important to discuss diet with your younger kids and with your adolescents and with their healthcare providers before making any dietary changes. As children get older, they start making their own decisions.
Sure do.
They
Yep.
become a little defiant about many things like clothes and music and friends. Kids and teens should be able to make decisions about their bodies with the help of their parents and health and eating habits. Making proper decisions about diet is essential to having healthy kids. And kids can be, let's say, make them a sous chef in your kitchen, help them prepare home cooked meals, and then sit around the table and eat that meal. And the kids will say, hey, I did this too. It's
Yeah,
cool.
but my question is, how many parents are qualified for that?
More
Sure they
than you
are.
think. I think
Yeah,
parents are
absolutely.
more qualified. So, in addition, parents can give info on ingredients and snacks, specifically those high in sugar and salt, which can help set up a pattern of healthy eating. So, Courtney, how are we going to get the kiddos to eat well? The childhood, adolescence, and nutrition. How can we get our kids and teens to eat better?
Yeah, well, if I had an absolute surefire plan to get that to happen, I don't know, I'd be rich and be happy.
We
All I
all
can,
would.
um, happy because kids are eating better, not necessarily
Right.
rich, but you get my point.
Sure.
So yeah, it's hard for parents. They're doing the best that they can with the
Mhm.
information that they have. We've talked about this before. Of course, you have budget concerns to meet those needs. So I thought it would be helpful to break it down a little bit today for parents, and hopefully there's some, kids or teenagers listening too, so that they hear the message of what really constitutes an overall healthful diet, and those nutrition concerns that we know are very common among kids and adolescents. So we're talking about grade school for the most part, up through teenage years. Hopefully
Right.
by time your kiddo branches off, and the reality is certainly by time they get to college, but even by time they are at the tail end of middle school and on their way into high school, they're eating a lot of their meals, their snacks with their friends, on the fly. So the take home message is do what you can early on to set a good foundation, and a lot of that information will sink in. But even if you feel like you missed that window, all hope is not lost, and there's still much you can do to encourage an intake, no matter what kind of eater you are, omnivore, vegan, vegetarian, so that it includes a lot of those missing compounds that we know are commonly deficient in kiddos. So I thought we'd start with that. And calcium is certainly at the top of the list for a variety of reasons. We've seen calcium intake gradually decline over the years, certainly throughout the decade. The problem with that is, as we've discussed, that window of time where kids develop strong bones really closes a lot earlier than most people think. And it closes by, at the outside, 30, and in many cases in our 20s. So it's really important to get enough calcium, vitamin D on board to make sure that your bones are as strong as they possibly can be. So we know that you can get calcium from more than dairy foods, but dairy foods happen to be one of your greatest sources of calcium. But if you don't do any dairy foods at all, you can certainly do some green leafy veg. You can certainly look for fortified foods, like cereals, for example, that might be calcium fortified. Certain non-dairy yogurts might be calcium fortified. Seeds and nuts. Almonds in particular happen to be a good source of calcium. So you want to, in the absence of consuming animal products, make sure that you're eating enough foods or drinking enough beverages that have a goodly amount of calcium. So it's important for all of us. And I have to tell you, even those kiddos who drink regular cow's milk might not necessarily be consuming enough. So generally it's like 2 to 3 servings of dairy a day are going to meet that that minimum, or the equivalent there. So super important to get that calcium intake from whatever food or beverage sources are going to work for your kiddos that they like. Because if they don't like it, guess what? You're never going to get it in.
Is it good to have give kids vitamins? I mean, when I was growing up, it was Flintstones, right? Flintstones vitamins.
Still around.
That's still around. And I was just wondering, because of the nutrient, issue for growth. Yeah. Is that something that should be considered, or not? I mean, what's your perspective from the dietitian standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I know in a perfect world, we get what we should need from our diets from food, right? Not just because, it's the right thing to say or the party line, but the reality is when we look at data from populations of people and wellness and disease states, we look at the types of foods that they eat, and it's usually in whole foods. And oftentimes when we try and mimic that with a pill, it doesn't always play out. Having said that, I do think that there is a role and a need, quite frankly, for supplementation, particularly in kids, because they're hard to pin down with intake. Calcium happens to be one of them. Calcium is found in a multi. We're going to talk about vitamin D next, because we, like adults, kiddos are definitely deficient in vitamin D, and that's an even trickier one, because unlike calcium that's in a lot of different foods and beverages, vitamin D is not. Certainly not in a lot of foods and beverages that the typical American kiddo enjoys. So egg yolks, although if you've got kids eat eggs, certainly, but sardines, fatty fish, they're not usually those foods that are very popular. But I wish
sardines, kids eating sardines, and I've not seen that.
Unless good luck.
Maybe if you're in Greece or somewhere, I don't know. I mean, it depends on what country. Sometimes
I don't even eat sardines.
No.
So it's a challenge. I mean, you can get fortified foods for sure, and I would encourage people to read those like yogurts and things like that to see if they've been fortified with vitamin D. But keep in mind that, again, it happens to be one of those vitamins that is not ubiquitous in a typical kiddo food supply.
Right,
so,
but I've always heard that the store-bought vitamins don't metabolize as well as the natural or the natural nutritions from food. Is that true or not?
They are absolutely metabolized as well. The trick is, however, that there's this in foods, they play in a sandbox with their friends of other minerals and vitamins that help their absorption. So they are being absorbed in a supplemental form, but they might be absorbed a little bit better when they're playing in that same sandbox with their other vitamin and mineral brethren. So that's why we want to say food first, because they do live in that environment, that sandbox with all their other vitamins and minerals. So they work in concert together. That's not to say that supplements don't work, but we've talked about this before. Given the regulations around supplements, i.e. they are really limited and pretty much don't exist. The only thing a consumer has is to look for that third-party testing to make sure that if you buy vitamin D, for example, you are actually getting vitamin D and not some other, oil that's in there. So look for that USP seal. Look for third-party testing to check for purity so that what you're buying is actually what you think is in that bottle. So I encourage everybody to be looking for that third-party testing, no matter what kind of supplement they're consuming. So iron intake is important. We particularly as say girls move on through teenage and they might be begin menstruation, it becomes more of an issue, but we do see iron deficiency or lower iron intake among both boys and girls, particularly during childhood and then into adolescence. And that's for a variety of different reasons. In a case of younger people now, many of them are exploring more plant-based options. Some of them may be vegan already. And although you can get iron from things like legumes and peanuts and nuts, certainly, yeah, your biggest source is going to be in things like meats, shellfish, eggs, and dairy. So if your intake is lower, obviously your stores may be a little bit lower. So again, more of a problem for I would say teenage girls, but still we like to identify it so that parents are aware, and then older teens are aware. Make sure you're getting an adequate supply of iron. Again, if you're taking a multi, there'll be a small amount in there. You never want to take an additional iron supplement without your healthcare provider knowing. Remember, we store iron, and so we're not clearing it every month. If you are of childbearing age and you are a menstruating female, you are losing iron every month. But you want to make sure that you're just not haphazardly taking an iron supplement. It can have adverse effects. So you want to make sure that your lab levels are indicating a low iron store in order to have that extra supplement on a daily basis.
Or cook with a cast iron pan.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, no, all jokes aside, I mean, you actually, am I wrong? Right?
No, you're absolutely right. Cast iron's back, baby. Yeah, it does.
It is.
Help.
I love. It's my favorite pans. I just love it.
Or
So
cooking,
what?
Yeah, cooking. Adding so along with cooking in cast iron or iron pans, if you add vitamin C, or any source of vitamin C to your iron iron sources, particularly your plant-based iron sources, it helps the absorption. So if, for example, you have a chili with beans in it and it's a red, like a tomato base, that vitamin C that's in the tomato helps that absorption, that uptake, helps your body absorb that plant-based, that non-heme iron that's in there. So cooking with cast iron, adding some vitamin C sources along with those non-heme iron sources are going to help your body absorb it.
Well, it's great. These are great tips. So in terms of deficiencies, is that covering it? Because I wanted to ask about how you deal with finicky eaters who won't eat, these meals that contain the vitamins and things that they need, and they just want to eat, chicken nuggets every day.
Right. So that's most of the deficiencies. I will say that just like adults, the adolescent and child intake of fiber is very, very low. So we're going to go with the age +5 rule to help your kiddo or your teenager meet their fiber needs. So if somebody is 11, you're going to add those 5 grams, and then you've got 16 grams a day of fiber to shoot for. So I would certainly encourage that. Constipation is a problem among kiddos, so you want to make sure that you're meeting that fiber need. So I think that goes in connection with that finicky eater, because finicky eaters, because of their limited intake, aren't necessarily getting enough fiber in their diet, because high fiber foods like fruits and veg and maybe whole grains are not very popular in their intake. And they might not be well hydrated enough. So those are 2 things that can contribute to it. So a lot of parents don't know, and I don't know, maybe you guys aren't familiar with it. Are you familiar with the division of responsibility when it comes to feeding your kids? Have you heard of that before?
The division of responsibility.
Division of responsibility.
Is that like the CIA underground?
Yeah, I haven't heard of
I
it.
mean, the division that you have X amount you have to do as a parent. I mean, how does that work? What is that?
Yeah, and it's in theory very simple, and the division is the following. The parent or the caregiver is responsible for the what foods, so what will be served, when it will be served, and where it will be served. The kiddo's responsibility, and this is really from a very young age, up until the point that they're feeding themselves outside of the home. The kiddo's responsibility is how much of what you have put out, or if they're going to eat it at all. And I will tell you that it's a really, really hard concept for a lot of parents to get their heads around, as simple as it is, because we're humans, we're caregivers, we're nurturing, and we don't want to feel like we're starving our kids. So it's almost a little too draconian for a lot of folks to feed that way, but it is a tried and true, well-researched plan in order to feed your children. They will not starve. Your job is to, again, continually offer a wide variety of different foods for them to eat. It is their choice to say no to something. And what research has shown us is that eventually they will play catch up in most cases. So they will catch up for that calorie deficit at the next meal or the next day. Our job is to make sure it's plentiful, there's enough of a variety, so don't keep serving the same thing all the time, but nor do you need to be a gourmet chef, whipping things around.
Sometimes I think parents are swimming upstream. Take a look in the morning, or take a look at any of the children's shows that are streamed or on television. Take a look who the advertisers are. I mean, in big money. And most of them are junk food. Even take a look at the advertising for the adults, for the McDonald's, for I don't want to bring out McDonald's, all of the fast food places. And they show you a hamburger dripping with fat, putting on a cheese, putting on all the things that are bad for you.
That's right. It's triggering intake with your eyes and not necessarily your stomach. And I'm not, I agree with you, that is present, but all the more reason why as parents, we need to educate ourselves. We need to know, and most people do know that eating fast food on a regular basis is not great for them. But Maxine gave us the data, right? That's out there. So there's a big gap between what we know, and what we're able to follow through on.
We do.
And some of that is that we're making things a little bit too complicated for parents. And if we feel like, or we make them feel guilty about not having this beautifully presented social media perfect meal, somehow we're inadequate, so they give up and they go for the fast food. I completely understand that. And I'm here to say, it has cover the basics, right? Find out everybody's got, kids have things that they do like. So always make those part of rotation, but don't make it the only rotation. I can't tell you how many times I see this, that a kid will land on, and I don't even want to pick a food. We'll just call it the XYZ food. Okay. And because the parent knows that kid likes that, it is every single day, in some cases, multiple meals throughout the day. This is where the parent might say, you know what, I need to maybe shake up the variety a little bit. And I promise you, the kid will eventually come around to choosing different foods. You try little things, you you introduce a new food with an already accepted food on the table or on their plate. That helps kiddos come around to trying new foods. Sometimes it needs to move very, very slowly. There are some sensory kids, right? So you don't want to push. You don't want to do clean plate club. You don't want to say you have to have a bite of this. You can do gentle encouragement, but it should not be a battleground, because what we know is that that battleground won't help the parent, and it certainly does not help the kid. And you might be fostering this sort of negative attachment to mealtime, which is not what you're looking for.
Right. And there's
Yeah,
also the fact
yeah.
that kids well, teens maybe, they have to look thinner, and then this is where like a whole other topic like of eating disorders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole show or a whole episode. So it's like the balancing act for the parent and getting the kids to eat right. I mean, we've all three of us have been through this, so we know
Yeah.
what the score is.
As I say, it ain't easy being a parent.
No,
Nope,
it's
it isn't.
definitely not.
No,
And
it's
I do
not.
want to mention, I am not an eating disorder specialist.
Mhm.
I have worked in collaboration with other practitioners where I would get a child or an adolescent as part of sort of like step down. So they've already seen an eating disorder specialist, or they're working with a psychologist, and now I'm helping them sort of stay the course. That I've done before. But it's really important that if you think your child is experiencing some disordered eating behavior, and this can be a child, by the way, who is on the thin side, but it can also be a child, by the way, who's considered normal weight. So their BMI percentile is what we consider, they're where they should be. Keep your eyes open to behaviors, and don't just attach it to weight. So I want people to think a little bit differently. So a lot of times, like, well, my kid's normal weight, they're not too thin, they're not too skinny, but there may be something else going on. So just be aware of those behaviors. There is something called ARFID. I don't know if either one of you are familiar with this. It's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID. And it is very important that we separate out the usually finicky eater, right? For a kid who just isn't eating a lot, but is eating enough, and you'd like them to broaden their intake, as opposed to the kid who is highly, highly restrictive and really eating only a couple of foods. This needs to be addressed appropriately. And again, pediatrician, psychologist, and/or psychiatrist, and a dietitian on board, so that all three of those needs are being met appropriately.
Yeah,
Right.
are there any blood tests or any sort of testing? Let's say you have a 7, 8-year-old, to see whether they are getting the right amount of vitamins for their age. Can they take a blood test or a saliva test or whatever?
Yeah, so typically at age 5, a pediatrician will order, CBC, cholesterol, triglyceride, blood sugar, as part of their workup. It's not done every year in kids like it is in adults or older adults. If nothing is seen as abnormal, there's really, they won't necessarily order a second look at, for example, maybe minerals, vitamins, B12, and things like that. That would, I think, if you as a parent have seen in your child that they are being very restrictive, and you're concerned at that next pediatric visit, it's certainly worth bringing up to your pediatrician. And you could say, listen, my kiddo's not getting, maybe it's somebody who's 10, does not eat any meat at all, doesn't like beans. Yeah, I give them a multi, but it's really not a lot. They might look at ferritin levels. They might look at hematocrit and hemoglobin levels. So there are things in a stepwise fashion a pediatrician will order in order to see if there's deficiencies.
Wow, there's a lot that needs to be checked, and we didn't even hit beverages, because what people are, what the kids are drinking, the sodas and the sports drinks and the juices. And the sports drinks are huge. If your kid's on a team,
yeah,
they're going to be drinking Gatorade or whatever you can do. And then of course the teens, as they get older and they're studying, they go for the ones that have the high caffeine and that stuff. That's
Right.
not a good thing.
So I know, I mean, I'm watching the clock, but let's address, so I do think if it's an athlete, or a kiddo who's working out more than in excess of 60 minutes a day, right, or at a bout of exercise, that happens to be a potential role where the Gatorades or the Gatorade-like beverages has a role. Where it doesn't have a role, and I feel like it's breached that, it's become part of it's trendy and all the kids are drinking it, particularly boys. I hate to sort of break it down by gender, but I do see this more in the boys. They're drinking it as part of their beverage. So it's replacing their calcium beverage, it's replacing regular water, and it's unnecessary. It's providing sugar that they don't need, the electrolytes they could be getting from a regular intake. So you're right, Maxine. If it were just reserved for the athletic environment, it wouldn't be as problematic, but it's definitely bleeding into part of just what I'm drinking every day.
Yeah, but from what I see, just going out and seeing people drinking, Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola aren't losing. I mean, I don't think they're losing customers. And you always read how horrible these drinks are for you. And generally, they're always promoting, especially in the fast foods, get your hamburger or get your fish and get a free Coke.
Well,
Okay.
it's part of that's part of the advertising to get to hook you in, and
Right.
to get kids not to be hooked in is a whole other thing.
Right,
It's like
the whole
that's
thing
the
is
issue.
the same thing they did with cigarettes. There should be some restriction on advertising for foods that are known to be bad for children. And technically,
Advertising is
the-
off the deep end at this
yeah, I
point.
know,
So
but technically, the airways belongs to the people. All the networks have to renew their license. I don't know what it is. It used to be every 2 to 3 years.
well,
And then they had to show that they were doing good. But the same way they banned cigarettes and for a long time alcohol, they should ban some of these fast food places.
well, good luck with all of that. I don't
I
think it's
know
going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. We just want to get the word out that we're trying to get healthy kids, and once in a while, yeah, you can go to fast food.
Fine.
Oh.
Once in a
Absolutely
while,
fine.
every day, not a good idea.
It even could be once a week. It doesn't have to be, once every leap year.
I know instances of people, their kids wouldn't eat anything else, and they wanted their kids to eat. So what do you do?
But it can be, and I gave a seminar, and I'll be brief, at a school yesterday, and a couple of parents came up, and they said it was what you said about how much they said, about the sodas. They're trying really hard to pull back, and it's been a little bit of a big hill for them to climb. But they also did not know about how much sweetened beverages, juice in general, the limits on that, which is only 6 ounces a day. That for a lot of parents is like, oh, I didn't realize that that's how little they should be consuming. So yes, it's the sodas, but it's also the whole category of sweetened beverages, and even 100% fruit juice that we need to start ratchet back and encourage waters and seltzers for thirst, electrolyte replacement when appropriate, certainly calcium and calcium beverages for those strong bones, and that should be the makeup of fluid intake for our kids.
Courtney, we're down to our last 2 minutes. Did you have anything that you wanted to add on
Yeah, just first take a deep breath. It's hot. There's a lot of information out there for parents to digest, that may seem conflicting. When you have influencers saying one thing and then your professionals saying another thing, it's really, really hard. So seek out credible information. Certainly seek out help for your kiddo. If you think that there is disordered eating that might be present, we want to make sure that we encourage healthful eating and wellness, not about being skinny mini, and get the help that you might need. Seek out those resources, and I'm going to post them, available resources for parents, so that they know that they don't have to do this alone.
Okay, and what is your website that you're posting them on?
I'll give it out. I can go ahead. I'll give it again.
Give it again.
You got it, Max.
All right, I'll take us out and I will give you the information. How's that?
Okay.
So here we are. We're at the end. Some great information. And thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. And to get more info, as we've been just saying, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, and on Instagram and TikTok at CLG Wellness, and visit her website, CourtneyGravenese.com, and you can ask her questions, and she'll be happy to answer, I'm sure.
Yep.
For past shows, go to malcolmpresents.com and the Many Shades of Green.com. This has been Courtney on Health, smart, sound nutrition, strong, safe fitness, and we will catch you again next time.
See you next time.
It's perfect. Here's the beat for the 30 minutes.
There you go.
Perfect timing. Have a great week, guys.
Okay,
Bye,
take
guys.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.